I want to say mobile eavesdropping is like searching for someone in a dark room. And I use that because when you search for someone, you would either turn on the lights, but what kind of lights are you going to turn on? And would you use sound? Would you feel around in the dark and search for that person?
Welcome to an episode of Same But Mini, a bite-sized version of our podcast where we explain the most talked about tech buzzwords, but a little bit faster than our normal episodes. What's up? I'm Mohan, and today we're trying to answer the question, is my phone listening to me? We're talking about mobile eavesdropping, and we have the perfect guest with us who knows a ton about the topic and is very familiar with the space. I'm going to let her introduce herself. Who are you and what do you do?
I am Alexis Hancock. I am a staff technologist at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, a nonprofit org that fights for digital liberties online. And I particularly work on a project called HTTPS Everywhere that offers encryption while you're browsing online.
And what is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, for those who don't know?
So the Electronic Frontier Foundation is a digital rights nonprofit organization. It's been around since 1991, so since essentially the internet's been public. And I want to say one side of the EFF is lawyers who help fight for our digital rights on the legislation arm. And on the other side, we have tech tools that we provide the general public so that they can be safe online and secure their sites.
So today is a fun episode because in one of our other episodes, I mentioned that I think my phone is listening to me and it caught a little bit of steam. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to cover that, but a little bit more holistically. So this topic of mobile eavesdropping came up. You know, what does my phone know about me, where I am, what I'm saying, what I'm wearing, how does my face look? And so I was wondering if you could help us understand mobile eavesdropping, but explain it to us using an analogy.
So I want to say mobile eavesdropping is like searching for someone in a dark room. And I use that because there's different ways of doing that, right? When you search for someone, you would either turn on the lights, but what kind of lights are you going to turn on? And would you use sound? Would you feel around in the dark and search for that person?
So it's like looking around in the dark for something or someone. So what are those analogies? What are those tools that you could potentially be using in real life to look for someone in the dark? And how does it relate to what's going on my phone?
So in particular, I want to say the most known way of tracking is through GPS technology or location services. So GPS is a sensor within your phone that's satellite-based. And I would make that analogy to if you go into a dark room and you turn on the general light for the room, the ceiling fan light or the ceiling light, and immediately be able to see where their position is in the room. And that's what I kind of want to say GPS would be like. But there's other location services that you can use that phones in particular deploy. I want to say the Android system and the iOS system. Those are the two that I'm referencing. And they offer location services with GPS, your IP address, and Bluetooth. And I want to say cellular networks as well. So obviously, your IP address is associated with the internet in particular, or your internet address, and data cellular use would be along the same thread. So location services kind of use a combination of these things. Bluetooth tracking or Bluetooth location would be me turning on a nightlight in the room. And the closer you are to that nightlight, the better I can kind of see who's in the room or what I'm searching for. Where it's more about proximity. So you've probably experienced it yourself. If you had your Bluetooth headphones on and you walk away from your phone that's connected, eventually that disconnection will happen pretty quickly if you walk out of your house because Bluetooth can only go but so far.
I already have so many questions. So GPS, you talked about satellite tracking, you talked about your phone service. How is that all happening that it's going to say, hey, it's you're completely off the grid and we can literally turn a light, we being whoever has this information can turn on a light and see exactly where you are? Is it triangulating all this information? Does one of them just have a beam to my phone? Like how does GPS really work, this idea of location services?
So there's 3 different types of sensors in your phone: motion, environment, and position. And GPS would be a position sensor in your phone. There's about, I may be getting the number wrong, but it takes at least 4 satellites to ping your location, I believe, for GPS to give a good location of your longitude and your latitude on the Earth, because these satellites are above us circulating around. And GPS started off as a project. I could go down a tangent, but I'll stop me if I do. I can talk about this all day. So GPS is owned by the U.S. government as a U.S. government-backed project. So there's other little projects around the world that detect location, but GPS is the most used one. If you turn on location services, that means it's using GPS, which is getting an approximate location, and then it triangulates even further and gives you a precise location with your IP address from the internet and possibly Bluetooth services as well.
Why is this helpful? Like, why does this matter? Is it just so we have maps and it can tell us where to go? Or is there bigger purposes or reasons for us to be able to give companies the access to not only one technology in our phone, but several to sort of figure out where are you?
Right. So that's one utility and the most used utility probably. But there's other reasons why applications ask for these permissions. I want to say that a lot of people use the Locate My Phone service if you lose it, and you can use location tracking or location services to find your phone through the internet. You can go on and see the ping and like, okay, well, obviously I left it in the grocery store. I'm going to go back there and use location services. So that's if the person using the phone, the holder of the phone, will probably have more utility reasons to use these. But if you flip it on the other side on why the phone the application in the phone needs it, those reasons can vary.
Could you also go in and just listen? And do people do that? Do apps do that with the microphones on your phone?
Sure. So this is based on the microphone and camera permissions in particular. And these are the ones I have seen in my experience to worry people the most. The most common use case is someone saying, I had a conversation with my mother about, going to the store and re-upping on milk. And then you go online and not just seeing milk, but the particular brand of milk that you use. And you're like, that is way too uncanny. My phone is listening to me. And to that, I say it's out there where applications have to ask for certain permissions to use certain services on your phone or sensors on your phone in order to claim that they're personalizing the experience for you or whatever other reasoning they be using. But I say be very careful about the apps you install on your phone and look at the permissions before you install, because some apps make sense where they need audio. So let's say you downloaded an application like Instagram. They'll likely ask for camera and phone permission. So you go into this dark room and the person that goes into the dark room is allowed to listen in on whatever the person in the room or object in the room that they're trying to find. They're allowed to listen in to see if there's any sounds. But if someone else was not given that permission, they can't just go into the room, and they definitely can't go in the room to listen to you.
Right.
Instagram, it makes sense they're asking for audio. It makes sense they're asking for camera. And a lot of the recent developments is only using these when the app is in use. So now finally that they've deployed that privacy thing, because that was something that we were advocating for and other entities were advocating for, is to only use these things when the app is open. The big worry is, what are they doing when the app is closed? And they finally made that distinction. Now that distinction is made, if you downloaded a calculator app and it's asking for your GPS and your microphone for some reason, that's a big red flag. And if you go back and you see something like that, I definitely encourage you uninstall that application immediately, because it's probably nefarious in some way, or the developer was just careless. It could be nefarious. It could be just carelessness and over asking for many permissions. But a lot of these, applications in the market could be particularly using these things for ad revenue. So they may be trying to collect information and send it back. Our users are using this in this location in this way. And they make ad revenue to promote their free applications and just gather data mining on people in particular when they may not suspect that this app is listening in.
That ad revenue is so they can better target. So they could have told that milk company, hey, advertise your milk to this person because they're talking about being out of milk.
Right, exactly. And also, since there's been so many applications that people install on their phone, a person could have over 20 applications on their phone. And they could have been using a particular service for years. I, for one, have had social media since 2008. 2007 probably, and the amount of data they've probably collected on me would be pretty accurate to the season, to the month, and to the day, likely based on my patterns going back years, over a decade.
That's so crazy.
So you have to think about it in that way too, is these advertising companies that have these large profiles of people with data willingly given or not willingly given over the past years due to fluctuating permissions, because even though permissions are better today, they weren't that great 10 years ago. And sensors have then been built into phones that people don't even understand that are there. So that's what location services comes in and searching for someone in a dark room, because there's so many ways to find someone in a dark room now versus 10 years ago. So if I have 10 years of data on someone, I probably know that they like to crochet with a particular type of yarn during this time of the season. Because it's summer, they probably want a lighter yarn, and I'm probably going to go ahead and get and advertise it to them, a future-based assumption on what they would like. So sometimes that can look like eavesdropping in a way because of the amount of data a profile in particular has.
What about TikTok? So I love TikTok, don't get me wrong, but I feel like if you Google TikTok, there's a lot of questions around the permissions and where that content's going.
Their permissions are really, really extensive and overreaching. And they've not only had a misstep with permissions, but they've had missteps with security vulnerabilities in their application in terms of communications. So they're not really starting out on a good foot when it comes to privacy, especially since TikTok is used by, I want to say, a lot of young people in particular. I may just be speaking as an old, but but I did notice that people younger than me was using TikTok. So I didn't explicitly get the application myself. I have seen TikTok videos pop up from here and there on social media forums that I use. And it seems cool. It seems great. But yeah, their permissions are really worrying, especially reordering of apps permission in particular is a really uncommon one. They ask for very uncommon things. Is TikTok spying on you with those permissions? They can in many different ways. Like, that's not just walking into a dark room and turning on a light. That's turning on all the lights, the night light. That's turning on a computer light. That's opening up all the windows and letting everybody like kind of hear the sound that's coming from the outside. It's really extensive and overreaching. And I hope they look at their permissions model and scale back a bit.
So thinking forward, say 30, 40, 50 years even, and where kind of this technology is going in terms of sensors on your phones, tracking, permissions, how apps are being developed. What do you if you looked in your crystal ball, what does that world look like?
I want to say with the work that I do, I want to go the optimist yet pessimistic route. So the optimist in me is that it's going to take legislation, good legislation in this country to reel in the amount of data collection. We've had some headway here with California Consumer Privacy Protection Act that was passed and went into effect. But that's just like a really, mediocre start, unfortunately. But unless we have that sweeping legislation that actually protects us, I imagine more dystopian things happening. I imagine more companies thinking of different ways to gather data on people. Hopefully, along with that, with legislation, things could get better and look better. I want to say that in 20 or 30 years, that platforms like Facebook or Twitter will be, I don't want to say disbanded, but broken down to where people can take their network with them if they want to leave a platform. I want to go back to where the internet is more into a person's hands. And I want it to where a network is in a person's hands and they understand what's in their hands. Like there's different sensors in your phone besides GPS. There's gyroscopes, there's accelerometers, pedometers, and all these things. And I want it to be where that's accessible again.
Right.
I want it to where, hey, I can change the battery in my phone if I want to. And I can add this sensor in the phone if I want it there. And I can take the sensor out if I don't want it there. I want people to understand the world around them better digitally. So I would say it'd be more utopian and more of an optimist way. But that can only really be ushered in with better legislation because we can't leave it up to private companies, unfortunately, to do that.
I love that. I love the idea of having the control back in your hands and being able, as you said, I want to opt into this, and I don't want to opt into that, and I want to design my network or my platform to be like this. And I think a lot of people are talking about it a lot on the data side of things, of having a little bit more control over your data. What are you releasing to who and how and where and when?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for the analogy and the explanation. I think the lesson I've taken home is if I'm in a dark room, just ask people to knock first. And we should make everyone else knock before they turn on the lights, put a nightlight in, open the windows, or just come in and start listening to us on our phones.
Yes.
Alexis, that was really great. Thank you so much for the time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I was glad to do it.
So is your phone listening to you? Well, yeah, but only if you give it permission. So be careful. Today's episode was written and hosted by me, Mahan Zanuzzi, produced by Karine Javier and Lee Schneider, exec produced by Steph Wolf, music by Ouvra. Thank you to our guest, Alexis Hancock. You guys can find more Same Same on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you happen to get your ear candy. Thanks for listening. Spread love.
This episode was brought to you in part by BCG Digital Ventures. BCG DV builds revolutionary new businesses with the world's most influential corporations. Learn more at bcgdv.com.
So I have a question. My parents, for example, are scared to leave. Not scared, but they're not leaving their Alexa plugged in because they think it's always listening. Is it? And is that something they should be concerned about?
So Alexas in particular have ambient listening, and they're supposed to only be activated once you are given their trigger word, whatever you said that. You could say Alexa or whatever word you set up for them, if that's what's occurring. And the general consensus is no, Alexa's not listening 24/7. They have ambient listening. They have trigger words. But sometimes Alexa triggers not because you said Alexa. You could have said my name, which happened a lot, by the way.
Yeah. I love this term, ambient listening. I feel like I ambient listened my way through school. It's like you're listening, but not really until someone calls your name, and then you're like, what? Okay, now I'm plugged in.